You know what's interesting? Most of us were raised to believe that saying yes makes us good people, good friends, good partners, good employees. And for a long time, I believed that too. I thought the more available I made myself, the more I gave, the more I said yes, the more I showed up, the more I'd be valued. But here's the truth. When you're always available, you slowly disappear. Your needs get buried under everyone else's. And you wake up one day realizing people aren't respecting you. They're consuming you. The research on boundaries is crystal clear. People with strong boundaries are not only less stressed, they also report higher levels of satisfaction and respect in their relationships. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop being constantly available, everything shifts. Not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Availability without limits breeds resentment. When you're always accessible, it doesn't create appreciation, it creates expectation. And that's the part that stings, because most of us aren't overextending ourselves out of arrogance. We're not thinking, oh, the world can't survive without me. No, we're doing it because deep down we've tied our self-worth to being needed. We've been taught that saying yes makes us valuable, that availability is love, and that if we just keep showing up for others, we'll finally feel like enough. But what actually happens is very different. The more available you are, the less people notice it. It stops being kindness and it starts being assumed. A quick text at midnight, you'll answer. Another project dumped on your desk, you'll take it. Someone else's crisis, you'll drop everything. And without even realizing it, you've trained the people around you to treat your availability as a given, not a gift. Psychologists call this availability bias. The more present something is, the less we value it. We see this in economics, in relationships, even in the way we treat our own energy. When you're endlessly available, your presence blends into the background. It's not special anymore, it's expected. And here's where resentment starts to brew. Because while people are living their lives thinking you're fine with always showing up, inside you're keeping score. I was there for you, but where were you for me? I said yes again, and I'm exhausted. That gap between what we give and what we receive is where resentment thrives. And the truth is, resentment is not just a feeling. It's corrosive. It eats away at connection, trust, and even love. Now let me be clear. Resentment doesn't mean you're broken or selfish. It means you've abandoned yourself in the process of caring for others. It's a signal. It's your body's way of saying, something isn't right. I can't sustain this. And if we ignore it, it grows. It grows into bitterness, into cynicism, into disengagement. It grows until we don't even recognize ourselves anymore. I've seen this play out in workplaces and marriages and friendships. The colleague who's always the reliable one starts secretly despising their team. The partner who never says no begins to feel invisible in their own relationship. The friend who's always on call stops picking up because they can't bear the weight anymore. And here's the hard truth. Resentment doesn't just damage the relationship with others. It damages the relationship with ourselves. Because every time we say yes when we want to say no, we're betraying our own boundaries. And betrayal always leaves a scar. So the invitation is this. Notice where your yes is costing you. Notice where being endlessly available has shifted from generosity to obligation, and give yourself permission to step back. Because the most respectful relationships, the ones that last, the ones that nourish us, are not built on constant availability. They're built on mutual respect, clarity, and the understanding that we're all human, not machines. And when we stop pretending that we can be everything for everyone, that's when we finally make space to be who we are. Boundaries teach others how to value you. When people hear the word boundaries, they often picture barbed wire fences, locked doors, or this idea of shutting everyone out. But boundaries are not walls, they're clarity. They're the simplest, most honest way of saying, here's where I end and you begin. Here's what I can give and here's what I can't. And the truth is, boundaries are not about controlling other people. They're about teaching them how to treat us. Most of us struggle with boundaries because we confuse them with rejection. We think saying no means we're being selfish or unkind or maybe even disloyal. But in reality, a boundary is one of the most loving things you can offer. It's saying, I value this relationship enough to be clear with you. I'm not going to let silent resentment grow between us. I'm not going to pretend I can give more than I can. That kind of honesty might be uncomfortable at first, but it's what builds trust. Research shows that people who set and honor boundaries consistently experience less burnout and higher levels of satisfaction in their relationships. Why? Because boundaries create predictability. They set the stage for healthier interactions. Think about it. If someone knows you're not going to answer work calls after 7 p.m., they stop expecting it. They adjust. And instead of resenting each other later, both sides know where they stand. What I've learned is that people can't read our minds. We assume they know what's too much or what hurts us, or where the line is. But unless we're willing to communicate it, they're left guessing. And when we don't articulate our boundaries, we end up angry at people for crossing lines we never drew in the first place. That's not fair to them, and it's not fair to us. Boundaries also teach people how much we respect ourselves. When you say, I can't make that meeting, but I can be there tomorrow, you're not just giving information, you're communicating your worth. You're saying, my time matters, my energy matters, I matter. And people pick up on that. The more we honor our limits, the more others learn to honor them too. Of course, not everyone will celebrate your boundaries. Some people will push back. They'll test them, they'll get frustrated, but here's what I've noticed. The people who truly care about you, the ones who want a healthy relationship with you, will adjust. The ones who resist, who only want access to you when it benefits them, those are the people who were never valuing you in the first place. And that realization, as painful as it can be, is actually a gift. It shows you who's safe and who isn't. I think we often underestimate how freeing boundaries can be. They give us back our voice. They create space for real connection, because connection without boundaries isn't connection at all. It's compliance. It's showing up with half a heart, half a spirit, and half a truth. That's not sustainable, and it's not love. So when you draw a boundary, you're not shutting someone out. You're inviting them into a relationship that's built on honesty, respect, and sustainability. And that kind of relationship, whether it's at work, at home, or with friends, is the only kind worth keeping. Scarcity creates value. Think about the things in life that we treasure the most. They're rarely the things we can get anytime, anywhere. They're the rare moments, the limited opportunities, the experiences, or people we know we can't take for granted. That's why scarcity matters. It's not about manipulating others or playing games. It's about understanding a fundamental truth of human behavior. When something is endlessly available, we stop noticing it. But when it becomes scarce, its value rises. The same principle applies to our time, our presence, and our energy. If we hand it out constantly without limits, it stops being special. It becomes background noise. People assume it's always there, and they stop appreciating it. But the moment you begin to step back, the moment you create a rhythm of yes and no, people start to realize what your presence actually means. They notice the difference between when you're there and when you're not. There's fascinating research in psychology about what's called the scarcity effect. We're wired to value what's limited. It's why diamonds feel precious, why limited edition products sell out instantly, why the last slice of cake suddenly feels more appealing than the first. Scarcity signals importance, and while you're not a product on a shelf, your energy works the same way. The more you pour yourself out without pause, the more invisible you become. But when you intentionally create space, when you're selective about where your time goes, your presence carries weight. I've seen this play out in personal relationships. When you're the person who always cancels your plans for someone else, who answers every late-night text, who rearranges your life to fit their needs, they don't wake up feeling grateful. They wake up expecting it. And then one day, you stop doing that. You set a limit. You don't answer. You prioritize yourself. Suddenly they notice. They realize that what they had been taking for granted was actually something valuable. And here's the important part. This isn't about punishing people. It's not about withholding to manipulate. It's about living in alignment with the truth that your time, your attention, and your presence are not infinite. They're precious. And when you treat them that way, other people begin to treat them that way too. One of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is that constantly being available doesn't deepen love or loyalty, it dilutes it. True intimacy, real respect comes from the balance of connection and space. We need both. When you give yourself permission to not always be available, you create room for anticipation, for appreciation, for people to realize what it actually feels like to have you in their life. And maybe this is the most surprising part. Scarcity doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. When you start honoring your limits, when you choose not to show up everywhere all the time, you begin to value your own presence in a way you never have before. You stop treating your energy as something disposable, and you start treating it as something sacred. Because the truth is, when everything about you is always on tap, no one can see its worth, including you. But when you start holding back, when you start choosing carefully, you realize that your time and energy aren't just resources, they're gifts. And gifts only matter when they're given with intention. Self-respect is contagious. Something powerful happens the moment you start honoring your own limits. People take notice. And not just in the obvious ways, not just in the calendar invites you decline or the calls you don't answer at midnight. They notice in the way you carry yourself, in the confidence of your no, in the way your yes suddenly feels wholehearted instead of resentful. Respecting yourself shifts the atmosphere around you because self-respect is contagious. When we talk about boundaries and availability, it's easy to think of them as private choices. My schedule, my limits, my well-being, but they ripple outward. The way we treat ourselves teaches people what's possible, what's acceptable, and what's healthy. If you consistently run yourself into the ground for the sake of others, people learn to normalize it. They begin to think that's just how she is. That's just what he does. But when you begin to draw a line, when you say, I'm not available right now, but I'd love to connect tomorrow, you're modeling something different. You're showing them that self-respect isn't selfish. It's necessary. One of the most striking things I've seen in research is that people with high self-respect actually tend to inspire better behavior in those around them. Colleagues become more thoughtful about expectations. Partners show more consideration. Friends begin to mirror healthier patterns. Why? Because when you respect yourself, you're not silently giving permission for others to misuse you. You're setting the tone. And here's the truth. Most people aren't out to exploit us. They're simply responding to the cues we give. If the cue is, I'll always pick up no matter what, they'll believe that's okay. If the cue is, I can be pushed past my limits without consequence, they'll push. But when the cue changes, when you calmly but firmly demonstrate that your time and energy are valuable, people adjust, they learn. Self-respect also has this beautiful side effect of deepening real connection. Think about it. Who do you feel safer around? The person who's always saying yes but clearly drained, or the person who's honest about their limits but shows up fully when they're present? The latter every time. Respecting yourself creates authenticity. It lets people trust that when you show up, you're really there. Now, not everyone will like it when you start valuing yourself more. Some will push back, some will test you. But pay attention to those reactions. The people who genuinely care about you will rise to meet the new standard. The ones who only valued your compliance may fade away. And as painful as that can be, it's clarifying. It reveals who's truly in your corner. I think one of the bravest choices you can make is to decide that your self-respect matters more than someone else's comfort. Because here's the thing, when you respect yourself, you give silent permission for others to do the same. You become a mirror. A friend might see your courage and finally set their own boundary. A coworker might watch you leave on time and feel safe enough to do it too. A child might see you honor your needs and grow up knowing that theirs matter as well. Self-respect doesn't just protect you, it shapes the environment around you. It sends the message, this is what it looks like to honor your own worth. And when that message catches on, the change doesn't just happen in you. It happens in everyone who sees you and decides they want that kind of freedom too. Space makes room for growth. One of the most surprising lessons about boundaries and availability is that the moment you stop filling every gap in other people's lives, you begin to see the space that opens up in your own. For so long, many of us live on autopilot. She rushing, saying yes, showing up, filling the silence, fixing the problems. And we convince ourselves that this is what being a good friend, a good parent, a good partner, or even a good leader looks like. But the cost is that our own dreams, our own creativity, and our own rest get buried under everyone else's demands. The irony is that we're often so busy keeping others afloat that we don't realize we're sinking. When you stop being endlessly available, you create something that at first feels uncomfortable, empty space. And let me tell you, empty space can feel terrifying because it forces us to face ourselves without the constant distraction of fixing and serving. We're left with questions like, what do I really want? What am I avoiding? What have I been too tired or too afraid to admit to myself? That's where growth begins. Growth doesn't happen when we're stretched thin. It happens in the margin, in the quiet, in the moments when we finally have the courage to sit with ourselves. Research on creativity and problem solving shows that our best ideas rarely come when we're overloaded. They come in the shower, on a walk, in the quiet minutes when we're not actively trying to be productive. That's the gift of creating space. When you stop being available to everyone else 24/7, you reclaim the energy needed for your own breakthroughs. You make room for new opportunities to find you, for clarity to surface, for joy to return. And this isn't just about personal gain. It also transforms your relationships. When you give yourself space, you stop showing up resentful and depleted. Instead, you begin showing up present, grounded, and genuine. That makes every interaction richer. Saying no to someone else today might mean saying a deeper, more wholehearted yes to them tomorrow, because you've had the time to refill your own well. I've seen this happen in the lives of so many people. A woman who always carried her friends' emotional burdens finally said, I can't be on call for everyone anymore. And suddenly, she had the space to go back to school. A man who stopped being the office yes person finally had the time and clarity to pitch his own project, the one that changed the trajectory of his career. Parents who created boundaries around their availability discovered they could show up to dinner with more patience and laughter instead of running on fumes. The truth is, we can't grow if we never make space. And space doesn't just appear. We have to create it. We create it by stepping back, by saying no, by letting others handle their own responsibilities. That's not neglect. That's trust. Trusting others to rise. Trusting yourself to matter. Trusting that the world won't fall apart if you stop carrying it for a while. So, when you stop being endlessly available, don't just think about what you're losing. Think about what you're gaining. Think about the dreams you've shelved, the rest you've postponed, the voice inside you that's been whispering, when will it be my turn? Space is not selfish. Space is the soil where growth takes root. And the moment you create it, everything in your life begins to bloom differently. The truth is, when you stop being endlessly available, everything changes. At first, it feels risky, like you're letting people down, like you're breaking some unspoken rule of what it means to be kind or worthy. But what you're really doing is rewriting the script of your life. You're choosing clarity over resentment, respect over exhaustion, and growth over endless obligation. Because availability without limits breeds resentment, and resentment slowly robs us of joy. Boundaries, on the other hand, teach people how to value us, and more importantly, they remind us to value ourselves. Scarcity creates value. Not because we're playing games, but because our time and presence are precious and they deserve to be treated that way. And when we respect ourselves enough to honor those truths, others learn to rise to that same standard. Self-respect, after all, is contagious. It reshapes every relationship we touch. And when we finally step back, when we create space, that's where growth takes root in us, in our relationships, and in the life we've been too busy to notice we were missing. So here's the invitation. Stop trying to be everything for everyone. Stop believing that constant availability is love. Real connection is born in honesty, in respect, and in the courage to say, this is who I am, this is what I can give, and this is where I draw the line. And when you do that, when you give yourself permission to step back, you'll find something extraordinary. Not only does the world not fall apart, but you begin to come alive in ways you never imagined. Good luck. Respect yourself, create space, and watch how everything begins to change.